Snowflakes tapped softly against the tall glass windows of the café, melting into quiet streaks. Inside, the warmth smelled of cinnamon rolls and espresso, with murmurs of quiet conversations and clinking cups. A man in a tailored charcoal coat sat alone at the window, his strong fingers loosely folded around a mug that had long gone cold. He didn't notice the snow. He barely noticed the world anymore. Alexander Dorian was known in boardrooms as the brilliant, ruthless CEO who built an empire after tragedy had hollowed him. But here, in this quiet coffee shop 2 hours away from the city, he was just a man avoiding memories that burned behind his eyes. He had come to this small town anonymously. No bodyguards, no press, no assistant trailing behind. Just a man in his 40s, with silver streaks in his beard, and eyes that looked like they hadn't really rested in years. Across the room, the cafe door creaked open with the jingle of a bell, letting in a burst of cold wind and something else entirely. Small, fragile presence bundled in layers of knitted clothes. She looked no older than 6. A pink beanie with a pom-pom swallowed half her face. A hospital bracelet peeked from under her sleeve. Her shoes were mismatched. In one hand, she clutched a teddy bear so tightly its nose was bent sideways. She walked slowly, her steps uneven, as if each one took effort. No adult was with her. Alexander didn't notice her at first until she stopped at his table. "Excuse me." Her voice was soft, uncertain. He looked up. 2 of the deepest blue eyes he'd ever seen stared back at him from beneath that pink woolen hat. "Can I sit here?" she asked, pointing at the empty chair across from him. He blinked, unsure what to say. People didn't usually talk to him like this, especially not little girls who looked like they had just come from a hospital. "Bed." He cleared his throat. "Are you lost?" She shook her head firmly. "No, the other tables are full." Then she added, quieter, "And you look like you need someone to sit with." That last part made something shift in his chest. He gestured toward the chair. "Okay, but don't blame me if I'm not very good company." She climbed into the seat slowly, as if even that effort took energy. She set her teddy bear on the table like he was part of the conversation. "I'm Lily," she said. "This is Button." The bear. Alexander let a small smile escape the corner of his mouth. "Nice to meet you, Lily. I'm Alex." She scrunched her nose. "You look like a Mr. something, like a principal or a businessman." He raised an eyebrow. "Guilty. Businessman. Are you rich?" He almost choked on nothing. "That's a bold question," Lily shrugged. "I ask bold questions. I don't have time for boring." Alexander stared at her. She had no filter. No walls. Just wide eyes and a fragile body that trembled slightly every now and then. She looked like someone who'd seen too much for her age. "Where are your parents?" He finally asked gently. "My mom is working. She's a nurse at the hospital." "Down the road," she said, absently stroking Button's ear. "And my dad went to heaven when I was a baby." Silence had hit Alex like a gut punch. "My wife too," he said after a long pause. "She passed away a few years ago. Car accident." The girl nodded as if she understood the weight of it. "You look like someone who misses people," she said softly. He didn't reply. He couldn't. They sat like that for a while, man and child, both strangers, yet somehow comforted by each other's quiet. The snow kept falling. "I come here sometimes," Lily said, taking a small sip from a cup of hot cocoa the waitress had brought for her. "When Mama's working late and I get tired of the hospital smell. They all know me here." Alexander looked around. The waitress had smiled warmly at the girl, and another older customer had waved at her earlier. She wasn't lost. This was her routine. "You shouldn't be walking in the snow like this," he said, his tone more fatherly than he intended. "I have boots," she replied, showing them off. They were 2 sizes too big. He sighed. Then she leaned closer and whispered, "You know what I think?" "What?" "I think maybe God sent me to sit with you today, because you looked really lonely, and I hate when people are lonely." For a moment, Alexander felt tears prick at the corners of his eyes, but he blinked them away. "How old are you?" he asked. 6 3/4, he chuckled. "That's very precise." "I don't like 7. 7 is too far from 5. Alexander leaned back in his chair, watching her as she chatted about Button's adventures, the way her mom sings lullabies even when she's tired, and how the hospital food tastes like someone forgot what salt is. He realized he hadn't. Genuinely smiled in weeks. And he also realized he didn't want this conversation to end. Alexander didn't remember the last time a conversation had made him forget the clock. But here, in this little wooden cafe wrapped in winter's silence, time had stopped. Lily had finished half her hot cocoa and was now drawing something with her finger in the condensation on the window. Alexander watched her. The quiet confidence, the honesty, the raw, unfiltered way she spoke. She reminded him of someone. His late wife, Elena. She, too, had asked bold questions when they first met. She, too, had a way of cutting through the layers of charm and pretense like a surgeon. Lily wiped a heart shape into the foggy glass. "Alex," she said without looking away, "you don't look like someone who just does normal business." He tilted his head. "What do I look like then?" She turned to face him again. "Like someone who has drivers, secretaries, and sadness." He smiled, but there was pain behind it. "That's very specific. I've seen people like you on Mama's hospital TV. You have that important man hair." He chuckled. Under his breath, "Important man hair?" She nodded firmly. "It's always shiny and serious." He didn't respond. Then she leaned forward, whispering as if it were a spy movie, "Are you a spy?" Alexander laughed, full and deep. The sound startled a couple at the next table. He couldn't remember the last time he had laughed like that. "No, Lily," he said, wiping a corner of his eye. "I'm not a spy." "Then who are you really?" He hesitated. Was it safe to tell her? Would it even matter? He looked into those piercing blue eyes and felt like lying would almost be disrespectful to her honesty. "I'm a CEO," he said softly. "I run several companies. Some call me a millionaire. Some worse things." She tilted her head. "CEO? Chief Executive Officer. Is that like the principal of a school?" "Kind of. But instead of students, I manage people who build things. Technology, investment, real estate." She blinked. "Sounds boring," he smirked. "It is, most days." Lily leaned her chin on her palm and stared at him. "So you're not just Alex." "I guess not," she thought for a moment. "Then I won't call you Mr. CEO or anything. I'll still call you Alex. You look better that way." "Thanks," he said, surprised at how much that meant. Then her eyes narrowed slightly. "Does my mom know who you are?" He frowned. "No? Why?" "Because she says rich people are usually the reason hospitals never have enough pillows." He blinked. "That's oddly specific." She nodded. "Pillow budgets are very serious in our house." There was a beat of silence. Then they both burst into laughter. A few minutes later, the waitress approached with a curious expression. "Mr. Dorian," she said softly, hesitating. Alexander glanced up, his smile fading. The waitress bit her lip. "Sorry, sir. We didn't know you were in town. The mayor left a message earlier. There's a group waiting to speak with you at the council office. They said it's urgent." "Something about your land acquisition plans?" Lily's head snapped toward him. "Wait, you're that Dorian?" He sighed. The moment of normalcy was over. "Yes," he said, almost apologetically. "That Dorian." Her mouth dropped open just slightly. "My mama's always talking about you," she whispered. "She said Dorian's company is buying up all the empty land behind the hospital. The one with the big trees where I used to have tea parties." He looked down, a knot forming in his gut. "I didn't know anyone even went there," he said quietly. "Just me." And sometimes Button. Lily wasn't angry, but something in her tone made his stomach tighten. She slipped off the chair and grabbed her bear. "I should go now," she said. "Mama's shift ends soon." He stood up, almost instinctively. "Lily, wait." She looked up at him. "You're nice. But sometimes nice people forget how the little things matter." The door jingled as she walked out into the snow again. Alexander stood still, surrounded by the warmth of the cafe, but suddenly it felt colder than the blizzard outside. Alexander stood outside the cafe for a long while, staring into the snowfall as Lily's small frame disappeared down the quiet street. Her words echoed in his ears. "Sometimes nice people forget how the little things matter." The sentence looped in his mind like a haunting melody. Back in his suite at the Ridgewood Inn, he couldn't focus. The documents his legal team had sent sat unread in his inbox. His phone buzzed twice, once from his assistant, once from the council office, but he ignored both. He sat by the fireplace, Button the teddy bear lying silently on the table in front of him. She had forgotten it. He hadn't even noticed at first. But when he looked down at the empty cafe seat across from him and saw the bear slouched just like Lily had left it, something clenched in his chest that it wasn't just a toy dot, it was her voice, her comfort, her courage. He ran his hand across his tired face. The last time he had cared about a child's toy, his wife had still been alive. Their son had still been alive. He stood abruptly, grabbing the bear. Half an hour later, Alexander walked through the automatic sliding doors of the Willow Springs Community Hospital, a modest building with pale yellow walls and hand-drawn posters taped to the reception desk. He approached the front counter. "Excuse me, I'm looking for a nurse. Her daughter's name is Lily." The young receptionist blinked at him, then did a small double-take. Are you Alexander Dorian?" she asked nervously. He nodded. "Yes, but I'm not here for business. I just need to return something. Please." She hesitated, then leaned into the intercom. "Can someone from pediatrics let Nurse Sarah know there's a Mr. Dorian here regarding Lily?" Alexander waited. Near the wall, his eyes scanning the corridor. Children's drawings lined the hall. Flowers, superheroes, stick figure families. One of them had a little girl in a pink hat holding hands with a round, brown bear. He recognized Button instantly. Footsteps echoed, then a woman in teal scrubs approached briskly, her brown hair pulled into a tired bun. She stopped a few feet from him. Her face was flushed with concern and suspicion. "You're Mr. Dorian?" she asked, arms crossed. "The CEO?" "Yes, but I'm not here about business." She narrowed her eyes. "Then why are you here, sir?" He held out the teddy bear. Gently, she left this at the café. Her posture softened. For a moment, her motherly instincts overtook everything. "Button," she murmured, taking the bear. "She doesn't sleep without him." "I didn't know," Alexander said softly. "I didn't mean to overstep." She glanced at him, searching for motive. "You talked to her?" she asked finally. "She asked to sit with me." Side I looked, like I needed someone. That made Sarah smile, despite herself. "She does that. Her doctors call her an old soul. I think it's just ... kindness. She was born with it." "How is she?" he asked, almost afraid to know. Sarah paused. "Lily's been sick for a long time. Bone marrow disorder. It's manageable, but she tires easily, bruises quickly. And infections are dangerous. We've been waiting for a donor match for over a year." Alexander's breath caught. "I'm sorry," he said. Sarah nodded. We don't need pity, Mr. Dorian. We need time. And sometimes miracles. He looked down. I may not have miracles, but I have time, and a few resources. She tilted her head. Why would a millionaire CEO care? He looked up, and for the first time, his eyes weren't guarded. They were honest, because she sat beside me, not knowing who I was, not caring about what I owned. And somehow, she saw the one thing no one else ever sees. Sarah looked at him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. She's in room 206. You can give it to her yourself, if you're really here for the right reasons. The room was quiet when he stepped in. Lily lay curled under a thick blanket, a storybook beside her, 4-line clipped gently to her wrist. She looked smaller than she had at the café, frail. Her energy was gone, but her eyes lit up the second they met his. Alex, she whispered, smiling wide. You came. He stepped closer, holding out Button. Someone forgot something important. She gasped and hugged the bear tightly, burying her nose into it. Button missed me, she whispered, then looked up. I missed you too. He sat down beside her bed. I'm sorry I didn't tell you who I was, he said gently. She shrugged. You were still kind, even before I knew. That simple sentence knocked the wind out of him. I want to help, Lily, he said quietly. However I can. She looked at him, then at the window beside her bed. Snow still fell softly. I don't need much, she said. Just ... Someone to come back tomorrow, and the day after that. He nodded. I will. The next morning, Lily woke to the sound of laughter echoing down the pediatric ward hallway. That laughter was rare here. It wasn't the tired chuckle of a nurse trying to stay upbeat. It wasn't the quiet hum of cartoons playing in the background. It was real. It was full. And it was hers, because when she opened her eyes fully, there he was, sitting on the windowsill with 2 paper cups in his hand. Alexander Dorian, the man the world knew as a reclusive, widowed millionaire, was smiling like he'd found something he didn't even know he had lost. Hot chocolate, he said. Extra marshmallows. Don't tell your doctor, Lily grinned. You came back. He handed her the cup. I said I would. She held it like it was treasure, then whispered, You're the first one who ever came back. Alexander's smile faltered for a moment. That sentence struck something deep. He knew what it felt like to be left behind. He just didn't expect to find that same ache in a 6-year-old's voice. By the end of the week, he was coming every day. At first, people didn't know what to make of it. The town's most mysterious billionaire visiting the hospital's children's wing daily, sometimes bringing books, sometimes puzzles, sometimes just sitting and listening to Lily talk about Button's latest adventures. Nurses began to smile when he entered. Even the most skeptical ones softened. He never arrived with cameras, never announced his presence, never wore a suit, just sweaters, quiet eyes, and time. Time, something money can't buy. And in return, Lily gave him something he didn't even know he needed, a reason to feel again. One evening, he found Sarah, Lily's mother, sitting alone outside the hospital cafeteria, sipping weak coffee from a paper cup. He sat beside her, quiet for a moment. She's stronger than most adults I've ever met, he said. Sarah nodded without looking at him. She's my miracle, even before she was born. And every day since. I want to help, he said carefully. She turned to him. How? I've already spoken to specialists in New York. There's a clinic testing a new marrow treatment. It's expensive but promising. Sarah's eyes widened. We don't have that kind of. I know. I'll cover everything. She stared at him, stunned. Why? He looked down, fingers tightening around his cup. Because I lost my son to a condition that could have been treated, if we'd caught it sooner. I lost him because I believed in control more than connection. But Lily, she didn't ask me for anything. She just gave me her trust." Sarah wiped the corner of her eye. "You're not the man I thought you were." "Good," he said. "Neither am I." Later that night, as he sat beside Lily's bed reading her a story, his voice low, steady, almost paternal, she interrupted him mid-sentence. "Alex? Can you stay, even if I fall asleep?" He looked at her, this small, fragile girl with the courage of giants, and simply said, "Yes." He turned the page quietly as her eyes fluttered shut. Outside the window, snow began to fall. Again. But inside, in that little room, there was warmth that no money could buy. And as he watched her sleep, Alexander realized something. He wasn't here to save her. She had already saved him. It was supposed to be a quiet transfer. No press, no headlines, no fanfare. Just a private plane arranged by Alexander, a special medical team, and a hope that New York might offer something small-town hospitals couldn't. A chance. Lily held Button tightly in her lap as the plane took off. Her pink beanie now had a tiny gold pin Alexander had gifted her, a small butterfly, a symbol of strength, he'd said. Sarah sat beside her, emotional but calm. Across the aisle, Alexander stared out the window, pretending he wasn't afraid, but he was not of flying, not of spending millions. He was afraid of hope. Because hope, once it took root, could shatter a man if it failed. The New York clinic was sterile, advanced and full of clinical terms Alexander couldn't pronounce, but Lily brought light to its gray walls the moment she entered. Nurses smiled at her. Doctors bent down to talk eye level. Even the coldest quarters felt warmer when she walked through with Button in her arms. Alexander visited every day. Sometimes for hours, sometimes just to drop off her favorite blueberry muffins, but every time he left her room, someone saw him. Someone whispered. Someone took a photo. And one day, it happened. The world found out. It began with a blurry image. Reclusive CEO Alexander Dorian visiting pediatric wing daily. Who is the mysterious child? Within 24 hours, it was trending. Speculation spread like wildfire. Was she his secret daughter? Was she the child of an ex-lover? A charity case? A publicity stunt? Headlines twisted every angle. Billionaire's redemption? CEO adopts sick child in silence. Who is Lily, the girl who broke through a stone heart? And then, the hospital's front doors were flooded with press. Alexander's world, once so carefully guarded, had been cracked open by a single moment of truth. Inside her hospital room, Lily sat watching the news on a tablet. She looked up at him and said, "They're talking about you like you're Batman." He forced a chuckle. "I don't have the voice for Batman." She pointed to the screen. "Why are they saying I'm your daughter?" "Because people are afraid of what they don't understand," he replied softly. She tilted her head. "But I thought grown-ups were supposed to know everything." "They pretend really well." There was a pause. "Do you want me to be your daughter?" she asked innocently. Alexander froze. She wasn't asking for money, or safety, or gifts. She was asking for belonging. He swallowed hard. "Lily, I want you to be whatever you want to be in my life. Friend, angel, family. You already saved me. I didn't even know I was drowning." She smiled and whispered, "Okay, then you're my not dead but definitely mine Alex." And somehow, that title meant more than anything else he'd ever been called. But peace wasn't going to last long. That night, Alexander received a phone call from the clinic. He was pacing the hospital rooftop, staring out at the city skyline. The doctor's voice was clear and cautious. "Mr. Dorian, we ran some additional genetic markers while prepping for the marrow simulation. It's standard when trying to identify future complications. And," the voice paused, "Mr. Dorian, Lily's bloodline shows a high probability of being related to you." Alexander stopped breathing. What do you mean? We believe Lily may be your biological niece. Silence. Thunderous silence. The doctor continued. There was a distant DNA match in our bone marrow registry. Someone from your family line. A rare genetic marker. We ran it twice. He gripped the railing tightly. My brother's daughter? Possibly. But that didn't make sense. Alexander's only sibling had died 20 years ago in a tragic house fire. His brother's wife, and their infant daughter. The funeral had been closed casket. No one had questioned it. But now now. The ground beneath his feet was shaking. Could it be? Had Lily somehow survived? Raised without knowledge of who she was? And ended up in this exact café, in this exact town, asking him, "Can I sit here?" Alexander stood outside room 306 with his fists clenched. Inside, Lily was drawing pictures with Button beside her, unaware that the foundation of her identity was quietly shifting beneath her. He had spent the whole night going through old files, adoption records, fire reports, digging into a past he had long buried, and he had found it. A truth that shattered him. His brother's baby hadn't died in that fire. The housekeeper, Sarah, had survived too. She had taken the child and run, terrified that the Dorian family would blame her for the fire she couldn't stop. She had raised Lily in secret, not out of malice, out of fear, out of love. He found Sarah in the hospital chapel the next morning, was lighting a candle. Her hands trembled when she heard him step inside. "You knew," he said quietly. She didn't turn around. "Yes," she whispered. "Not at first, but later." When Lily turned 5, her eyes, her smile, they were too familiar. "Why didn't you tell me?" She turned now, her face pale with guilt. "Because I thought you'd take her away, that you'd claim her and She'd lose the only home she knew." Alexander shook his head slowly, breath heavy. "You thought I'd care more about bloodlines than about her. I thought you'd be like the man in the headlines," she whispered. "But you're not." Tears welled in her eyes. "You sat by her bed. You brought her muffins. You read her stories and fix Button's torn ear. You didn't just show up. You stayed." There was silence between them. Heavy, aching silence. Then she whispered, "She's yours, Alex. By blood. And by bond. She was always meant to find you." That evening, Alexander entered Lily's room holding something behind his back. Lily looked up from her coloring. "What's that?" He pulled out a small snow globe. Inside it was a tiny cafe, 2 chairs by a window, and a pink-headed girl sitting across from a man. Lily gasped. "That's us." He nodded. "Custom made." She turned it over in her hands, shaking it gently. Snow danced inside. "But why?" she asked. "Because I want to remember the moment my world changed," he said. She blinked. "You mean the day we met?" "I mean the day I found my family again." He knelt beside her bed. "I have to tell you something. Something real. Something important." She nodded, listening carefully. "You remember how I told you I had a brother? The one who went to heaven?" "Yes," he said softly. "But he left behind something. Someone." He reached into his coat and pulled out an old photo. A baby in a blue blanket, held by a young couple. "That baby was you, Lily." She stared at it, stunned. "That's me?" "Yes, and they're your real parents, my brother and his wife. But that means," he nodded, "I'm your uncle, Lily, and you've been in front of me this whole time." Tears welled up in her eyes, not of confusion, but of something deeper, belonging. "I always felt like I was waiting for someone," she whispered. "And I always felt like I'd lost someone," he replied, voice trembling. "Turns out we were waiting for each other." She reached for his hand with her tiny fingers. "You won't leave now, right?" He shook his head, overwhelmed. Never. You're mine, Lily. You were always mine. 6 months later, Lily ran across a sunlit garden, her hair longer now, her cheeks fuller, laughter filling the spring air. She chased after Button, now patched, wearing a tiny superhero cape. The New York treatment had worked. A donor match was found, and Alexander made sure she received the best care, the best support, and for the first time, a real childhood. In the distance, Sarah watched with quiet gratitude, her role now not as the frightened caretaker, but as part of a real family. And Alexander? He sat on the porch, coffee in hand, eyes on the little girl who had walked into his life with one small question. Can I sit here? She had no idea then what she had awakened in him. But now? Now she knew, because no matter how broken, cold, or distant a man might be, sometimes all it takes is one sick little girl, a forgotten teddy bear, and a cafe window to remind him what it means to love again. The end.